Will The Crow 2024 be the best representation we have of the comics? When we talk about The Crow, we immediately think about the successful film of 1994. Starring and immortalized by Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son, being the first film adaptation based on the comics with the same name, and the only one to achieve such success among the fans, because after this, there were multiple films that tried to meet the standards set by that successful version. But unfortunately, this was not the case. It turns out that after so many years of failed attempts, including canceled projects with high-end actors like Jason Momoa, we will have a remake of this film, with Bill Skarsgard as the protagonist of this new adaptation, an actor in which we are confident that he can do justice to the masterpiece that the comics are, and hopefully he can live up to the expectations that the incomparable Brandon Lee set for us. But what if I tell you there are details in the trailer which indicate that this will be the case? What exactly is The Crow? In this video we'll be discussing all these details. And for more videos of your favorite series and movies, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Welcome to the Oasis Geek. The story of The Crow is a very interesting one, as it lets us know that when someone leaves existence, a crow takes their soul to the land of the dead. But sometimes something so bad happens that the soul cannot rest until what is wrong is fixed. This is exactly what happened to Eric, who exactly 1 year after his death returns to the land of the living, to take revenge against those who took away what was most precious to him, and also ended his life. In the '94 movie, we could see that the antagonists were working for a guy named Top Dollar, who orders them to visit the building where Eric and his fiancée Shelley Webster lived, since Shelley was causing him problems because she was asking for tenants' rights and trying to have the building closed down. This visit leads to each of them abusing Shelley, and in an attempt to save her, Eric's life comes to an end when he is shot and thrown out of a window. Shelley is taken to the hospital in serious condition, and hours later ends up with the same fate as Eric. This new adaptation seems to be trying to replicate what we saw in that movie, which makes sense, because if they want this one to be a success, what better example than the most memorable version of all, but obviously with a few changes. In the trailer, we could see that we are going to be shown a little more of the story between Eric and Shelley. In some scenes, we could see that both of them were on a not-so-good journey, but as time goes by and with mutual support, they managed to get ahead. But unfortunately, the past is still the past, and thanks to Shelley seeing things she wasn't supposed to see, her apartment is invaded, and they end their lives. The connection and development of their relationship is an element we haven't had before, and it's a key piece they added to this new adaptation, as it will help us better understand how strong the bond between them was, and the impact the antagonist's actions will have. This being the reason why Eric's soul could not rest without first taking revenge. I think this is the first of several changes they are making to the movie to make it fit in with current times. This change is one that not everyone may like, and I completely understand the reason for your annoyance. But something we must remember is that the first movie was not adapted 100% from the comics. I say this since in the comics, the incident is much more tragic. This is because the reason for the attack on Eric and Shelley was completely random. They were at the beach, where Shelley was seen looking very happy because they were getting married soon. On the way back, Eric's car starts to break down, which leads to him to pull over to check it out. While this is happening, we see T-Bird and the rest of his gang pass by Eric and Shelley, throwing a bottle at our protagonist. As they stop and start to return, Eric asks Shelley to lock the doors and roll up the windows. T-Bird and the others offer to help Eric with his car, to which Eric says thanks, but that he can take care of the problem. This goes on until T-Bird shoots Eric in the head, but fails to finish him off. Shelley cries and asks him to stop, but T-Bird aims at his head again. This is where our protagonist sees the crow for the first time and calls him by his name. T-Bird shoots him, leaving him motionless on the ground. The crow tells him it's not his fault and also asks him not to look. But ironically, Eric can only do that, Just keep watching while T-Bird and the rest of his boys pull Shelly out of the car, abuse her and end her life. Unlike the movie, in the comics, Eric is the one who is taken to the hospital. This is where Captain Hook lets Eric know he was brain dead and tells him he's sorry his girlfriend had to suffer like that. He gives him his card and jokingly tells him that they should have coffee sometime. As he says goodbye and tells him that he hopes he had a good life, Eric tells him that the crow told him not to look. So, if you think back to the original movie, Shelly was destined to go through tragedy, as her actions led to it. But in this new adaptation, she will be more inclined to the comics. Since apparently, the interpretation will be that what Shelly saw was accidental, and this leads to her eventually being tracked down and taken care of. And in the comics, it was pure chance too, because if they had not gone to the beach, or if the car had not failed, the story would be very different. This detail may be the key to the success of this remake. One of the other things we will witness that we had not seen before is how exactly Eric returns to the land of the living. In the original movie, we only see Eric come back to life thanks to the crow. But in the trailer we could see that Eric interacts with a person, or rather an entity presented in the guise of a person, who we will be knowing as Kronos. This entity has a high probability of being the one who guides Eric in his mission. In other words, Kronos is the crow who brings him back and who gave him his powers, one of these being immortality and the ability to regenerate. And in the land of the living, he will take the form of this distinguished animal. There is something to keep in mind, and that is that upon returning to life, Eric ceases to be Eric and becomes something else. He becomes what we know as the crow. But just like in the original movie, we will be seeing his official transformation to the crow, which happens to be when he paints his face. I know it may seem a bit confusing, but it's simpler than you think. Kronos is the entity or spirit that helps Eric return to the land of the living, which will take the form of a crow to guide him to complete his mission. Upon returning from the dead, Eric becomes the vengeful spirit called the Crow, which will take revenge against those who harmed his fiancée Shelly and him. By the way, Eric is not the only one to be known as the Crow, since every time a soul cannot rest because they must correct the horrible event that caused their death, they are also known as the Crow. I hope that with this explanation you have understood a little more. The reason why this adaptation may be the best representation of the comics, living up to the expectations of the original film, and to the standard set by Brandon Lee with his phenomenal portrayal of Eric Draven and the Crow himself. I also hope you understood what the Crow is. Let's be clear, I'm not saying that this version will dethrone the original film. That film will always be an iconic one, and nothing will ever take its place, just as no one will ever take Brandon Lee's place. But I can say with a fair amount of confidence that this may be the best interpretation since that masterpiece, as the other adaptations have not lived up to the expectations. But tell me, what do you think about all this? Do you agree with my words? What are your expectations with this new version and with Bill Skarsgard? Do you think this is just the beginning? And for more videos of your favorite series and movies, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. You are on The Oasis Geek.